Welcome to the Introduction to Tiamat tutorial. This is going to show you some of the basics of Tiamat and the power of it and what it does. Tiamat in general is a Maya render layer controller scene assembler tool for use with Maya and V-Ray. In the future I do plan on adding other renderers, but at the moment it's meant for Maya and V-Ray. So let's get started. So first off, I have just a basic scene to use to show you sort of the different things that Tiamat does and the power of it. So let's get Tiamat going. So here's Tiamat. As you can see, first off, it does take up quite a bit of screen space. You can scale it however you want, but I personally like to work with it rather large. I have, like most people nowadays, I have two monitors, so I usually stick this on the second monitor with some other Maya panels if need be, and use it over there while I have my main Maya up on my main monitor. So let's get started. So here, right off the bat, you can see this is where layers are going to be listed. So this is where you create the different layers that you're going to use in your scene that you want Tiamat to create and control. This is the layer members. This is what is going to be in those different scenes or layers. And these are the layer overrides for the particular layers. You also have a selection area here, which as you create groups and V-Ray object properties, they will be listed here, and you can use them, select them easily, and paste them into different panels of Tiamat quite easily, and also paste overrides along with them here, which I'll show you later. And then this is also a more advanced section here called overrides, where you can track overrides and also save override states and do other things with your overrides. Down here is Tiamat's local render control area, and also you can set up a launching to farm based on however your company or you as an individual at home, how you have, if you have a small farm set up or something like that, you can set that up so that Tiamat will launch it to the farm when you want to. Over here we have groups tab, and then you can also go to VROPs where you create your different VROPs. Your actions, which I'll explain later. Actions are basically a sets of overrides. AOVs, this is where you would handle your render elements, as V-Ray calls them, or AOVs, which stands for arbitrary output variable. Basically your different channels. And here you also handle your light selects. So V-Ray handles all these for you. Then these are the main buttons. Obviously build all is to build everything, to assemble. Tiamat doesn't actually do anything to your Maya until you tell it to build all. You can build all just layers, or you could build a selected layer. You can build all of your V-Ray object properties, or just build your light selects if you'd like to. And then there's the paste selected from Maya and select highlighted Maya, which are two important buttons that you'll use often, which I'll show you. So just as a beginning, typically what I like to do is I would start as by assembling groups. I'll show you sort of the power of Tiamat's grouping. So let's create a group. First off, let's create a group, and let's call this cubes. So I'm going to create a cube group. Now right off the bat you'll notice that when it creates the cube group, it puts a greater than and less than symbol in front of it. This is a tag to tell Tiamat that this is actually a group. So when you use this anywhere else in Tiamat, it knows that it is a group and knows to treat it as a group. Then here is where we're going to put our group of members. Now, right now, I have a cube group, and then I have some cubes in here. So I could just type in, literally just say cube group if I'd really like to, and if I want to see what's in this group, I can say select highlight in Maya. Oh, and sure enough, there are my cubes. Another way to do it is, instead of typing it in manually, is you can just select what you want to go into the group, put it here, and say paste from Maya, and it will do all the writing for you for those who don't want to type a whole bunch. So that's our cubes group, and again, if we want to test it, select the group, select highlighted. So let's create another group. Let's call this spheres. So our spheres group, I'm going to put all 3 spheres in, paste, and it does that for you. And again, if we deselect, select the spheres group, and say select highlighted, sure enough, we get our spheres. And again, cubes is our cubes. So let's put down, let's call this ground. It's going to be our ground group, which will be the plane. And again, paste. And let's test that out. Ground, select, sure enough, we get a ground. One thing nice that is in Tiamat is they're not like Maya groups. In Maya groups, you can only have one object in one group at a time. Like you can't put a cube group in a different group in Maya. But in Tiamat you can. Anything can be in any number of groups. So for instance, if I wanted to put, say, this plane, actually let's make something different. Let's go with something that's not even geometry. If I wanted to put a light into this spheres group, I can. Paste that light in there, and then let's deselect and go select highlight, and sure enough I get the spheres and I get the light. So this allows you to have control over a great power of things. You can say I want to have, let's say I want to put a sphere in here. So deselect, and let's say select highlighted, so sure enough now I have my cubes and my sphere. But then if I select spheres also, it selects the same sphere again. So it's very easy to, if you want to have a thing just called like, all geo or whatever, or anything with the ground, or all lights or things like that, it's very easy to create those groups, and you can still use other groups. Particular characters or something, like if this was a particular character, you could have it in its own group, and then you could have it part of the all characters group. So let's get rid of this for right now, and let's create a light group. So let's call it key lights group. So in our key lights group, since I only have one light, I'm going to put that in there. And I like to test out my groups, make sure. Oh, sure enough, there's the light. There we've got ground, we have spheres, and we have cubes, and I'm going to get rid of that so that we have just the cubes. So now spheres, I want to show you another powerful thing with Tiamat. You can also do wildcarding. So let's say we don't know how many spheres we're going to have in our scene. We just want P sphere. So now if I go select, it's going to use the wildcard. So you could have 4 spheres, 5 spheres. So that way if, for instance, let's take this sphere and let's duplicate it and create another one. And now if we go here to spheres, select, of course it selects all of them because it's wildcarded, which makes it very easy when you're in large work environments. If things change, and they might have, oftentimes they'll have a version number at the end of certain objects, and you don't know what version you're going to eventually end up with in your scene, you can just wildcard that, and it makes it very easy to keep it within your groups and keep it nice and organized. So moving on, another thing you can do with groups is you can have groups of groups, which I call a master group. So let's have one called all geo. And again, rather than, I could of course select all the geo and stick it in there, but actually what makes it nice and easier is I can do this. I can say the cubes group would be in here. So again, if I go select, I get the cubes group, because whatever is in here, it's going to select. It only goes one level down, so I cannot put another group within the cubes group for it to select. So it's just one hierarchy level up, but allows you to do groups of groups. You can also do groups of VROPs, which I'll show you later. So, but I want to show you another handy tool. If I bring this out over here, as you'll see in my selection area, I have right now, because I've created these groups, it has created selections for cube, spheres, ground, key, lights, and all geo. Now, you will notice here you can only select one at a time, but here you can multiple select. So you can drag select, you can do the whole control select, you can shift select, however you want to do it. So if I deselect and then scroll over all of them. So let's say for all geo, I know I want the cube, spheres, and ground groups to be in there. So I can go to all geo, click in the All Geo group member area and this little button, paste into selected. And again, Tiamat fills that out for you. And now I can deselect these and use it for something else later. So that's a nice easy way to help to fill out your Tiamat script nice and easy. So again, if I select this and I say select, I get everything, all the geo, because this group then looks down into these groups and finds what's in there for selection. So let's move it on. Tiamat also handles your V-Ray object properties. So let's go over here. And let's say I want to create a V-Ray object property called cubes. Now you'll notice again, what Tiamat does is it puts VROP, VROP, V-Ray object property stands for, cubes. It fills that up for you. Just like in groups it puts little tags in front. Well, this is basically the VROP is the tag for Tiamat to know that it's a V-Ray object property. So now for members, sure, I could add them manually. You know, I could select a sphere or a cube and I could add it in here and I could say paste and I could type out all the cubes, or I could wildcard it here. But you know what? Luckily, I have already created a cubes group. And again, with the selections, I can just press here and say paste. And it's, oh, sorry, wrong one. Paste, there we go. So it has my cubes group within the cubes VROP. So now if I want to create another one, I want to call it spheres. So VROP spheres, I'm going to have my spheres pasted in there. And I'm going to have a ground VROP. And in my ground VROP, I'm going to have my ground group. The reason why you want to use groups in Tiamat is because it makes organizing so much easier, and also when you rebuild things, what Tiamat does, if everything is in a group, it just builds and everything works right off the bat. Your V-Ray object properties will be rebuilt using all of the groups that you designated. So for instance, if you were to have your V-Ray object property called cubes and someone were to add another cube in here, you wouldn't have to add it in here and add it here and add it here and wherever else you used it in the Tiamat script. As long as you used the cubes group, all you would have to do is add the fourth cube in here. And so it makes it very easy to add and then just say build all, and Tiamat again assembles everything correctly based on all the stuff that you told it to do. So moving on. So here's your, when you say build all, Tiamat will build these V-Ray object properties. I'll get into actions later, and also AOVs and light selects later. So for right now, let's actually start building some render layers. Let's go into here. So we can see we have our master layer, which is all we have right now. So I'm going to build a layer. I'm going to call it the cube layer. So, or actually, let's call it cube BTY for beauty. So this is the cube beauty layer. Now, in this cube beauty layer, again, I'm going to have, I want to have the cubes, the spheres, the ground. I'll put my key lights in there. Now, I could just say all geo, but that's another way to do it. I could just say that, but you know, maybe I don't want all the geo in there in the future. So for right now, I'm just going to have these. Select in the layer members, paste them in there. And so now these are the layer members that are going to be into the cube beauty layer when I create it. Now, one thing I'm not going to want is, let's say, I do want my cubes, but I want the key lights. I want the spheres and the ground to actually just be not visible by camera. So let's do this. What I can do is, normally there's a paste override section right here, so it'll show you if you want to create something as a matte, a shadow, you want to hide it, unhide it, or do a material override, which is a capital MO. That's the key for telling Tiamat to do a material override. And there's also custom ones, which I'll show you in a second here. Let's show you actually actions a little ahead of time, but here. So if you want to, actions are basically the other half of an override. So what you would do, let's start with just ground here. So let's say I wanted to have the ground as unseen by camera. I paste it in. Now how overrides work in Tiamat is you would have the first word is what you're going to be doing the override to, and then you space and you type in the override. So I could type in primary visibility and space 0 and then the number. So basically I'm saying, telling Maya, take the grounds group and make its primary visibility off. And when I would build this, it will put all these in here and set ground primary visibility to 0. So let me show you that here. Let's build some layers. So if I go build all, it's going to ask me, do you want to build light selects? Yes. Do you want to build VROPs? Yes. Build all layers. Okay. So it's already done it. As you can see, it's quite fast. This is a simple scene, and it can get pretty heavy. And some of the scenes I've been working with are huge, and sometimes a build can take 10 minutes, just to give you a warning. But these are, and I'm talking very large scenes with, 27 layers in them, and hundreds and hundreds of objects, maybe thousands, and hundreds of shaders and hundreds of overrides and all sorts of things. But overall, it's quite fast on the smaller stuff. So as you can see, it created a cube beauty layer, and sure enough, look, it created V-Ray objects called cubes, ground, and spheres. And let's display, it's displaying set members already. So here you can see it's put the cube group into the cubes VROP, it's put the plane into the ground VROP, and it's put these spheres into the VROP spheres VROP. So that's already set up for you. And now let's see what else we told it to do. So we told it to put all these things in there, and then we told it to make the ground visibility 0. So let's check out the ground. We go to the ground, and we go to ground shape, and sure enough, it set an override as primary visibility off. So it does that for us, which is the whole reason why we use this. So let's go back. Now let's say I don't really want to do this on a group. I want to use VROPs, because those are actually a more efficient way of doing this type of stuff. So let's delete this. And let's say for my cube beauty layer, I'm going to have my spheres and my ground object, and I'm going to do a paste override, because paste overrides are, if you're going to be pasting into the layer override area of Tiamat, it can just make it nice and easy for you to paste things into. But first I need to create an action. An action is like what I had said, the primary visibility 0, that's an action. So I can create an action. I can say PV 0. Create. Now again, the little tag for actions are the @ symbol. So VROPs are VROP, groups are the little greater than less than, actions have the little @ symbol. So here I can say my action is going to be primary visibility space 0. So basically the second half of the argument that goes into layer overrides. So now if I go into paste overrides, you'll see, look, there's a PV0. So I can select PV0, go in here, click in here, and say paste, and it fills it out for you. Puts in VROP spheres space and then @ PV0. And you notice there isn't a third argument. That's because this handles it for you. So now if I build all layers, it's built it again pretty fast. If we go to the cube beauty layer and we go to the VROP ground and we scroll down, look, primary visibility is off, and the VROP spheres primary visibility off. So it's done that for us. Now if you notice, if we go to the ground, primary visibility is back on. Now why is that, when we had told it to do that before? That's because how Tiamat works is Tiamat literally, when you tell it to build all, it is going to look for these layers that you have listed, and it is going to completely delete that layer and rebuild it completely from scratch from what you tell it to do here. This is great because it helps to prevent any sort of Maya layer corruption, and also makes sure that there is nothing going on in here that is not here. So there's no surprises, which is typical if you've done a lot of debugging in lighting, trying to find out what people before you were doing could be a real pain. This, on the other hand, just by looking at here, you know exactly what's going on in the layer, because this is the only thing that actually is done in the layer when Tiamat is in control of it. So this is also another thing you got to remember with Tiamat is I recommend once you start using Tiamat, everything needs to be done in here. You don't want to be doing this where you're going into Cube Beauty and then selecting a cube and creating your own little override, like create override, which I don't know why you would want to do that. It's more of a pain than just having Tiamat do it for you. Because if you then use Tiamat again, you say build all, you say okay, and it does it for you, and you go back to that cube, that override is going to be gone because Tiamat again completely deletes the layer and rebuilds it from scratch. So continuing on, now that I have that layer set up, I can create, let's create another layer. Let's call it sphere underscore beauty. So for my sphere beauty layer, again, deselect these, and I'm going to go, let's see, in here I'm going to put the cubes, the spheres, the ground, and the key lights. Again, paste. And then here I'm going to say I want the cubes and the ground. No, let's say I'm going to use selected VROPs. I'm going to do spheres and the ground as primary visibility off. So again, makes it nice and easy for you. And if we go build all, let's try this again. There's another layer. If we go to the sphere beauty layer, we can look at the cube VROP. And oh, sorry, this is the cube layer. Get to the wrong one. No, it is a sphere layer. Let's see what's going on here. Sphere layer, the ground. Oh, look what I did. See, user error. So what I did, as you can see, I have the spheres. So Tiamat's doing exactly what I told it to do. So if I delete this, another learning lesson here. I found that Tiamat rarely makes mistakes. It's usually user error. If I paste this in here, and again, what's nice is because it's just completely non-destructive, gets rid of it, and then I'm back to where I want to be. And we go to the, let's try the sphere layer, which again should then do the cube sphere up. If we go to the cube sphere up now, sure enough, primary visibility is off, and the ground, primary visibility off. So let me show you another nice powerful tool with Tiamat and some of these standard overrides that I've put in there. There's matte, shadow, hide, unhide, and material override. So let's go back to the cube layer, and let's say I want the spheres, instead of being primary visibility off, let's just delete that. Let's say I want it to be, I want the spheres, make sure I have nothing else select. Okay, so VROP spheres. I want the spheres to be a matte. Now, as you know, those of you who've probably worked with V-Ray, there's a few things you have to control in order for the matte to be a true matte, which I'll show you. And the nice thing is Tiamat takes all care of that for you. So if I say paste, again, it does VROP spheres. And again, it doesn't do a third argument. These standard ones, except for material override, they don't require a third argument because Tiamat knows how to handle them. And it does all that for you. So now if I build all, build, and let's go looking to see what we did here. So in the cube beauty layer, we told it VROP spheres are a matte. So let's look at the VROP spheres. And sure enough, see, it's turned it into a matte. It's said be a matte surface, makes the alpha contribution -1, and does a reflection amount of 0. So there you go. You got an instant matte by a press of a button. So let's say you want the ground in the cube beauty layer, say you want it to be a shadow. So a shadow catcher. Let's see what that does. So again, go over here to the VROPs, VROP ground, except this time we're going to say you're a shadow catcher. I'm going to put it in here, paste it in there, and let's build all. And let's take a look here, let's see what we got. So our cube beauty layer, we told it the sphere was a mat, which we already saw, and we told the ground to be a shadow catcher. So let's look at the ground here, VROP ground, and oh, did a lot of things. So let's see, it says you're a matte surface, alpha contribution -1, turns off generate render elements, turns on shadows, and says effect alpha, which will give you in V-Ray a shadow catcher. Now, of course, you would probably want your, if this is a shadow layer, you would want your cubes to be primary visibility off, unless for some reason you would want them in your shadow pass. So, let's see what else here. AOVs, I'll show you real quick. Let's go over the rest of this. Let's create some AOVs. Now, how you create these in Tiamat is several ways. I'll just show you in the Maya way, and then in a more advanced tutorial, I'll show you sort of the use of AOV list files that you can create. So, under render elements, let's say I want bump normals, and let's go lighting. Let's add diffuse. Of course, we always have diffuse, right? And of course, normals. Reflection, refraction, and specularity. Well, just some of the basics here. So, as you notice, I'm not really caring about what layer I'm on, or if they're checked on, or whatever. So, close that. I've created them. Now all I have to do is say, update, and Tiamat fills out this for you. Now what you can do is you can say, okay, my cube beauty layer, I want all of them. Which again, you can see I just multiple select. You can click and drag, make it nice and easy. So when you build the layer, it's going to include all these AOVs. Now let's say in the sphere of beauty layer, you say I want all of them, but I don't want the normals. I don't want bump normals, and I don't want normals. So now if we go build all, builds all the stuff for us. Let's take a look at what we've done. So if we go look at the render layers, or elements, on the cube beauty, we have yes to all of them. On the sphere layer, we've shut off the bump normals and the normals. So Tiamat makes it very easy to control your AOVs just by click dragging and making it super easy for you. So that's basics on that. Let's look at light selects, on how Tiamat handles light selects for you. So again, let's use our selected groups. We have our key lights, and again, I'm going to use groups for filling a lot of this out, because that's the most efficient and best way to use Tiamat. So I'm going to say this is key lights, and it's ls again is this the tag for Tiamat to know that it is a light select that it's selecting. And then in the light select group, I'm going to paste the key lights. So now that's in there. So now I'm going to build all light selects, VROPs, and layers. Now if you notice what Tiamat has done, so on the side here under light selects diffuse, it has created a light select diffuse and a light select spec already for you based off of the key ls key lights diffuse, ls key lights spec. And what that does is Tiamat automatically breaks up the light into a diffuse and spec light select for when you're rendering. And another nice thing is if you go back to AOVs, here are the light selects. It just showed up there. So let's say in our cube layer, or our beauty layer, or sphere beauty, let's say I want my light selects in there from my key light. And now, since I'm actually probably going to render, I don't think I want, no, this is fine, ground and cubes. Now let's leave the ground on. Just delete that. But I want my cubes to be unseen by camera. So now I'm going to go, again, build all, light selects, VROPs, layers. And if you notice, is every time I build all, I am completely rebuilding, deleting the layers, completely rebuilding from scratch. redoing all the light selects for you based on whatever groups, if you use groups, like I said you should. And same thing with VROPs. All your VROPs are being rebuilt from scratch. It's deleting your VROPs, rebuilding them from scratch, deleting your light selects, rebuilding them from scratch, and deleting all your layers and doing the exact same thing. So everything that is here is completely controlled by here. So now we go back to groups, and let's see what happened here. So we have in our sphere a beauty layer. I'm going to show you one other option. One other tool with V-Ray is for local render control. So if we look at, let's do a render. So here we go. Now you notice the Maya render viewer came up and then it went away. Actually, in older versions of Maya, it doesn't necessarily go away. Many of you probably find that a bit annoying. I know I did. And then we have our V-Ray frame buffer, which is what I really like using. And here we can see, you know, we have our spheres and the cubes are set to unseen by camera. And I have it set to, it's hard to notice in this scene because it renders so fast, but I have my subdivision set to 1 and 8 and other options in here. But what I can do with V-Ray and Tiamat is I can have it control the local render settings. So as you saw, this is what I set at 1 and 8. So, but for a local render, I can say local render. As you notice, first off, the Maya frame buffer did not pop up at all, and only the V-Ray frame buffer, which is nice. And it rendered off at the percentage I told it to, 50%. I was set to 640 by 480, so it's 50%, which is that. So that is nice and easy to control your percentage size of the render for your local render. And the other thing is it renders really well. It's hard to conceive, but it rendered faster because what it did is set my min and max to 1 and 1, and then did my max depth to 1. And I did tell it to render AOVs, so we can look at our AOVs, like lighting, diffuse, reflection. Don't have any reflection on anything. And also, if we look at, there's the diffuse, and there's the key light spec, which is all in here now too, because we told it to be in here. So I set that to 1. I can also tell it if I want it to render with GI or not, and motion blur for quick renders, and also I can lock a camera, which is nice because a lot of times you want to roll around and look at things in perspective view, but you want to lock your render camera to a certain render camera. So you can do that here, and just if you don't see the camera on the list, just hit update, and then it should update the camera list, and then you can pick the camera that you want in the scene. You can also choose to render selected. So if we wanted to, let's see, I wanted to render just this, I could say render selected, and then say render, and there we go. We rendered just that, which is perfect. And then if we render everything, there we go. And it's nice and easy and fast. And and it's non-destructive. If you notice, my render settings have not been changed. It's still 1 and 8. And what Tiamat does is it literally keeps in memory what your render settings were, replaces them very quickly with these, then kicks off a render, then puts them back to what they were. And so that way you have basically a different set of render settings for your local renders. I know a lot of people that I work with, they use just this, if anything, all the time for local renders and everything, because it's nice and handy and easy. So that is some basics of Tiamat. I will get into more of it on another tutorial for Tiamat. But thanks for listening, and hope you enjoy Tiamat.